Q&A feature of Zoom. I've seen some people already asking questions. We'll be answering the questions live after the speaker has finished. So when posting a question, please include your name and your organization, um, so that we know how to address you later on. And for those inquiring about the certificate of attendance for CSP members, it's available upon request. So you can also submit inquiries or application for CSP membership through subscription at ittc.up.edu.ph. So a CSP panelist will mention later on how you can request for the certificate of attendance. Right. So to kickstart our talk, let me just introduce our speaker. So our speaker for today is currently the Director for Senior High School Engagements at De La Salle University. Prior to this, she served as the Director of the Advanced Research Institute for Informatics, Computing, and Networking of the college's research arm. She is also an Associate Professor of the college's Software Technology Department, where she previously served as a department chair for 10 years. She obtained both her master's and doctorate degree in computer science degrees from De La Salle University. She has co-authored numerous articles in academic journals and conference proceedings, and has been invited to deliver lectures on grand challenges in natural language processing and computational storytelling. Her professional activities include serving as an accreditor for the Philippine Accrediting Association of Schools, Colleges, and Universities, or PASCU, a local technical reviewer and evaluator for the Philippine California Advanced Research Institutes, PICARI, and more. So, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed speaker for this morning, Dr. Ethel Ong. Dr. Ethel Ong.
Thank you, Eunice.
Okay.
Share na screen.
Let me just stop my share. Stop.
So, good morning, participants. My slides are interactive. So if you want to join me, I'll give you a few seconds to go to Zthings so you can participate in the live polls, questions, comments. You can also take notes. So go to zthings.com/ECJO. So assuming you're already there. So first, let's gauge our audience. So let's take a poll now. Which type are you? So we have 198 participants. Siguro kung naka-70 tayo or 80, I can continue. So most of you are still tertiary level educator. So while you're taking the poll, Zthings is actually a free software. So you can, so as an educator and as a student, you can actually use Zthings. So as you can see here, I can take polls, I can make my slides interactive, and I can already ask my students or my participants and find out what they are. And I can see the response. And at the end of the session, all of this will be recorded. So we have 2 parents. We have a number of students, probably industry professionals, or just want to attend, 11%. Okay. So mostly pa rin are tertiary level educator. Earlier, I saw people from Marinduque, Pampanga. Hindi ko na ikukunin yun. Okay, so we're nearing 70, 2 more, and I will continue. So this is one example. So now that we know our audience, so let me just set the expectation for this webinar. So let me give you some background about myself. So unlike our previous presenters, I am actually not an instructional designer nor an educational technology. So I am really a computer science faculty. So what you will hear today are all my experiences in moving my classes from face-to-face to online mode. So about myself. So I have 4 kids. You notice I have 4 kids at all levels. So I actually monitor their education. I know what's happening to my kids in college, in senior high, in junior high, in grade school. I know the type of lessons they're doing. I even help. So for senior high, I help set up their, so in Lassal, I help set up their connection to our Canvas, which you will see later. Then for our grade school and junior high, I actually help the teachers facilitate their online class, because like a lot of us here, we do not, prior to ECQ, we've never conducted a class online. So basically, I'm a college teacher, but since Lassal opened its doors to senior high school, I also teach senior high school research. And I've been an administrator for more than 15 years already in the university. And right now, because we absorbed the integrated school, we have a campus in Manila. So I'm the one taking care of assigning our college faculty to the senior high school. So our senior high school in Manila is being taught by college faculty, and I take care of that. And at the same time, I also monitor our grad school students. And the other one, I'm also a researcher. So as you can see here, my area is in natural language processing, conversational interfaces, and I have projects with DOST and chatbot. So what I will share with you today are the practices that I learned when I moved my classes to online mode. So another poll. So most of our polls will be at the start and at the end. In the middle, wala tayong poll. So in these challenging times, we keep hearing these statements from parents and students. Students keep saying, why do we need to go online? Students keep making excuses that their internet is slow, they cannot learn online. Parents are saying they lack finances and resources, and parents want to skip 1 year. If you've been following the DepEd post and the President Duterte's post, a lot of parents are actually happy and want to skip for 1 year. Now, as educators, how do you think we should respond to that? When you hear people talking about those things from parents, from your students, how should we as educators respond? So this is another type of poll. So you notice when you type phrases, it will come out. Wala pa nagtatype. So amidst the fears and the negativity that you've been hearing from parents and students, how do you think we as educators should respond to them? Ayan, one. So as educators, we're also confused. Some educators, we should be flexible and compassion. There are educators who want to go blended learning. Okay. And some will just say, go ahead and adapt. We need to think of flexible ways, keep safe. So iba-iba, nakita niyo yung mga responses. And you can see these responses. If you do things like this, you can see how your students are responding. They have to rise to the challenge. They need to be retrained and retooled. That's why we have sessions like this. Pray a lot. We have to be creative. Okay. We should find ways to help our students, and maybe that's the reason why we have a lot of attendees today. We're already at 218. Okay. So for those who just came in, and if you want to join the polling, go to zthings.com/ECJO. ECJO is my acronym, Ethel Chua Joy Ong. Baka kasi those who arrive late may not have seen my first slide. Okay? So I'm gonna stop at 50 responses. So may mga nauulit, nakita nyo, a lot are saying be flexible and support our students. So that's basically what we're gonna do now. How are we going to be flexible? How are we going to support our students? So I see this, So somebody said this, that amidst all this pandemic, we must continue to teach and learn. Just like we leave it to the doctors to find cure, as teachers, we must try to establish some kind of norm. So we must continue teaching and learning. So one more poll. So how might schools, colleges, and universities continue to educate their students? There are a lot of options, but basically we can classify them into these three. So which option are you for? So the first one is wait until the campus fully opens. So we don't know how long this will be. When will we develop the vaccine? We go fully virtual or online. Or we do hybrid. So we start online. Then when the situation improves, we don't know when, we can start going face-to-face learning. So right now, for example, in our university, we're thinking by second term, which is around October, we can go face-to-face already. So we can do hybrid. But for the coming July, we're gonna do fully virtual or online. Okay, so mas marami na. Okay, so we got 80. Let me just continue. So these are the options for learning. I already explained it. Wait until the campus fully opens. But the problem with this one is we don't know when is it conducive enough for us to go back to campus. So, and then the other option is for campus to go fully virtual or online. But again, we have the problem of resources. A lot of our families do not have the laptops and the internet connection to go online. So still others are opting for hybrid. This is one option, and a lot of schools are opting for hybrid, but the scheduling issue is really a concern. How do we reduce the number of people on campus so that the campus will not serve as the place where everyone got COVID? Okay. So just a quick look. It is a DepEd. Okay. I was originally intending to have a poll, pero hindi ko na pinol. Do you agree with this one or hindi? So if you look at DepEd, they provided two options. So sa mga lugar na naka-ECQ or GCQ, face-to-face, blended learning, and so on. In fact, for those people who do not have internet connection, they're providing a radio or TV-based instruction. So our radio and TV are already in talks with DepEd to do that. Some are doing what they call flexible learning. So in a flexible learning, some schools, for example, they allow the parents to choose. If you want face-to-face, we go online, we use Google Classroom, for example. And if you don't have the resources, the school will send packets of materials, which is also what DepEd did. DepEd is saying no need to buy tablets, they can send printed materials. Okay. So earlier in the DepEd slide, and some of you also, you've noticed you've used a lot of keywords: distance learning, remote learning, online classes, blended learning. I will not try to differentiate them. As I've said, I'm not an educational technologist, so I will not try to differentiate them. For the purpose of today's webinar, every time I mention online learning, I'm referring to all of this. Learning that takes place at your home, where your teachers and your classmates are geographically apart from each other, and you combine some synchronous, meaning like this one, I'm talking to you live, or asynchronous learning, I leave some task for you to do and you will submit it later. So strategies for online learning. So to help me prepare for online learning, I started attending a lot of classes, a lot of lectures, a lot of resources. So as I told you, I'm a researcher. So one of the resources I found that I kept reading on right now is edutopia.org. So it has a lot of articles and strategies on online learning. So I got the strategies there, but I mixed some examples from my actual classes. So there are 5 strategies that Edutopia shared. So edutopia.org. So first is to establish a digital home base for your class. Keep it simple. Number 3, prioritize longer student-driven assignments. Number 4, build as much contact as possible. And number 5, establish an online class culture. So let's go through them. Establishing a digital home base. What does that mean? So when students are lost, the online space is very huge. In fact, some families are already saying, let's not just send our kids to online class. The tuition is expensive. There are a lot of resources online. The problem is the students would not know where to go. How do I start if I want to learn programming in Python? Where do I start? So the online space is huge. There are so many resources. There are so many tools available. Even the channels of communication are wide and varied. So students can get lost in this chaos. So how do we help them? So we help them by setting up what we call a digital home base. So this is a place where students can always visit for the most recent and up-to-date information about the class, and where they can access and track their progress and gain access to learning tools. So the reason why we need a digital home base is to cultivate stability and norms. They know that, for example, every Monday, Wednesday, I don't have to leave the house, but I still have to wake up early. I have to go to school online. This is where I go. So it can be a learning management system, LMS, like Google Classroom. This is Canvas or Instructure.com. There's Moodle. There's, one of these is Sakai, and I forgot the other one. So these are the things you can use. There are a lot of other LMS out there, or you can come up with your own website. So if you're techie, you can come up with your own website. So why is that necessary? So many students will struggle to adapt to online learning, and there's inequality in digital access. Not everyone can attend class on time on the same day. Some cannot connect, some will run out of power. So I have students in, I think it's Marinduque, who went home to Marinduque and they have power failure. Okay, so she cannot attend my class. So we have to consider that. There are also changes in home dynamics. So parents and older siblings work from home. So imagine this laptop of mine is being shared by my kids when they have class. When they're using my laptop, then I cannot deliver a class on my own. So how do we do that? Or somebody earlier in the background, I hear younger kids causing disruptions. And because we are all at home, we're expected to do household chores. So this is an example of my digital home base. So just a background. So I came from Lassal, and Lassal has been using what we call, Lassal has migrated and went through 3 LMS. We started with Blackboard. I never used Blackboard. Then they shifted to Sakai. I also never used Sakai. Then Canvas. When Lassal went to Canvas, it was started at our computer science. So at the College of Computer Studies, we're the ones who started it. And I was one of those who also learned it with my peers. And then after computer science learned about Canvas, they shared it to the whole university, and it was adopted now by the whole university 2 years ago in 2018. So it was then called now Space. So it's actually just Canvas. Then as you can see here, this is my digital home base. So I created this recently as part of the training because we've been training in Space for the past 2 months already. Even though I've been using it before, I went through formal training only recently. So this can be my home base. So it's called Practical Research 2. I'll be teaching this subject this July 1. So this is what my students will see on the first day of classes in July 1. They will understand what the course is all about, that they will have teachers in classroom and they will have research advisors. I'm also giving them a tip. So if they click a course overview, they'll see what the course is all about. They know about the instructors, the learning modules, and so on. So I'll go through this in the rest of the slides. So for example, if they click about your instructor, they can see about me. So this one, I have to change my picture because these students have never met me. That's now the new reality now. These students have never seen my face and they will be with me for 14 weeks. So I put my picture there and I give some background about myself and some contact information where they can reach me and so on. I will get back on the contact information later because this is our step 4. Okay, so the next phase, now that you have a home base, now that the students know that every morning they just type animo space, that DLSU, if they're from Lassal, that's what they type, and they will see all their courses there laid out for them. The next thing the teachers now have to think, how do we design now our courses? So the next tip is to keep it simple. What does that mean? Part of our problems as faculty, so I will admit it also, I do that same thing. We want to cover so many topics. We think that for this subject, for Progress 2, they need to learn all of these 10 topics. Okay, we want to achieve our learning outcomes. We want to have the same number of assessments and so on. But take note, we are no longer inside our classroom to walk through the learning process with the students. We're not there anymore. We don't see their faces all the time. In fact, we tell our students to turn off their video so that those who have poor bandwidth can still connect. So I don't see their faces, we don't see their faces. So our issue now as faculty members is to think, what is essential? It will take much longer online to move through the curriculum or the syllabus. So you only decide which one should they take. There is not enough time to cover everything. So as you can see, this is my example. So this is my example. If you notice, so do we just transfer our traditional materials to the online platform? So as I mentioned earlier, Lassal started Animo Space 2 years ago, 2018. But in computer science, we started using it in 2017. At that time, we even call it blended learning. Lassal has had blended learning for so long. When I started using Canvas, all I needed to do was simply use it as a platform where my students can see the syllabus. So the paper-based syllabus became a digital version with links to the slides and to the exercises, and that's it. All the class activities are conducted face-to-face. So Canvas for me then was simply a place where the students can find the materials. That's it. But is that online learning? No, that's not online learning. You cannot just take your traditional learning materials that you provided in class and put this online. That's not the way to do it. And that's what I've been teaching our senior high school faculty for the last months also, because they kept telling me, but we cannot cover everything, Miss. And I kept saying, no, tell me which ones are important and we only focus on those parts. So that's the first thing as teachers you have to think about. What are important, what can go, what can be left, what are essentials and what are inessentials. So planning is going to take more time and requires a high level of attention to details. This is true. This is true, and I've seen some example videos and lecture materials that the teachers from the school where my kids are attending, they showed the sample. They had a parents orientation last night and they showed samples of this is how we will deliver the classes. And that's just only for a 10-minute sample video. And I said, how many takes did the teacher have to do this, right? So they were video recording themselves. So it really takes a lot of time. And not only that, we must also adapt our instruction for the online format. We have to choose our content carefully. Again, it's not simply moving your books to online mode, because if that's what you do, the students will keep asking, why do I need to pay this much when I am studying on my own? The teacher is not doing anything, which is happening a lot of times during the emergency remote teaching that happened during March and April. Because we are not ready, we just simply put our resources online and we tell the students, watch this video, answer this worksheet. I heard a lot of teachers do that and the students do not want it. Okay, so we need to choose our content and build our activities so that the students will be engaged. So how do we do it? So how are we going to build those rich activities? We go back to the same process that we've been doing. It's the same process, the backward design. We identify our target learning outcomes, which ones are important. So for those teaching in K-12, actually DepEd already came up with a revised list of essential learning outcomes. So focus only on those and determine what kind of assessment will you do to show evidence of learning and then you plan learning experiences. So this backward design is still very relevant. The question now is, how will you translate all of this to online mode? Okay, so I will focus on planned learning experiences so you are more familiar with your respective disciplines and what are the expected outcomes. So I will only concentrate on the third step, which is how do we now plan learning experiences and delivery of instructions. So there are two models that I look at. First is modernclassrooms.org. So I discovered modernclassrooms.org when I was reading one of the articles from Edutopia. So Modern Classrooms project is actually a way they were trying to change how they deliver their lessons to keep students more engaged. This is in the US. So they provided a lot of sample exercises and materials that we can adapt to the online mode. So in their model, this is how they deliver. This is how a classroom looks like. So they have what they call blended instruction. When students come to class, they have already accessed the content or the resources through the digital Homebase. So you've given them the materials in advance. When they come to class, you now go through a discussion with them. Then you also provide them with a set of learning activities that they can learn on their own. And before they proceed to the next task, you have some kind of an assessment where they can show mastery. So this one is very nice for the modern classroom because it allows students who are fast learners to go through all the lessons quickly, and those who are falling behind to also catch up eventually because they already know what will be covered. Okay. In Lassal, we translated it into something like this. So in Lassal, we have a unit called DLSU Assist. So they're the ones in charge of instructional systems technology. They're the ones managing our LMS. So they translated it into these 4Ds. So every lesson, every big idea that you need to teach your student, you have to look at this 4D. Discover what are resources you can ask them to read, what videos can you ask them to look at. Okay, there are so many resources online. All we need to do is to be able to find this and share this with our students. Then when you come to class, you can do a little bit of lecture, but you don't use your 1 hour with the teacher just talking. You can use the class. Already you know that when the students come to class, they have read your slides, they have watched the video, they have read the book, and so on. And you can use the class, devote only 30 minutes to quickly go through your slides, and the rest of the 30 minutes you can discuss misconceptions, you highlight important concepts from those materials, okay? And then you can do and demonstrate assessment and so on. So this demonstration and assessment can be done asynchronously. So you don't have to be there monitoring them because you cannot even see them, right? So you can leave it with them. They can do their assignments, reports, practice exercise. And this can be done iteratively, the discussion and demonstration. And then once they're ready, they can take an exit assessment so they can go to the next step. So these are the models. How do we translate it in an actual class? So this is how I translate it in an actual class. So I develop the lessons. You develop the lessons, you deliver the lessons, and then you give them additional materials. Take note, 1 and 2 can be interchanged. If you interchange this is like the flipped classroom. You give them the resources first, then you deliver the lesson and you answer some questions and discussion. Then you give them some practice exercises to do. So when they practice exercise, they can do it on their own. And there are some expansions here. They can do the work on their own, but take note, because it's online, we can actually use online tools to get students to collaborate on the work. And then also, do not leave your students on their own, meaning you let them do it, you do it asynchronously, but you tell them that if you have questions about your assignments, you can look for me, whatever platform you want. What's this flying plane? So you have Messenger, you have Viber, you have email, you have WeChat, okay? Then at the end, you can have some kind of an assessment before you proceed to the next phase. So how do we translate it? This is how we translate it in Canvas, in Animospace. So our assist already came up with a template, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. So We just have to fill it up. So every week, he already came up with a template. So discover what are the things the students need to read first or to watch first. Then during class, you can come up with a discussion board where the students can already post their questions. And during class time, you answer those things. And then you give them a way to practice what they learn in class. And then if you want them to deepen their understanding, you can provide additional resources. Okay, so in this example, one module is equal to 1 week. So this is one module, 1 unit of lesson, but you can change it to vary. You can vary it. You can say 2 weeks to cover only one big idea or one big theme. It's up to you. And it's up to your LMS. I'm just showing how we do it in Canvas. So this is another example for my actual class practical research 2. So you notice I divided it. So for the first 7 weeks, the class teacher, which is me, will be the one leading the discussion. So from week 8 to week 12, they will now be in constant consultation with their advisor. So the advisor plays a big role in the university because we have university professors assigned as senior high school advisors. So the students are assigned to teachers who work in the same research area as they do. The problem now here is the students have to look for the teacher, because the teachers may not necessarily be teaching in senior high school, they're just on campus. So we give them time to do that. So let's look at one in particular, research ethics. So you notice here during the discovery, I point them to resources that they can read. And then I ask them to do an informed consent as a practice to show that they understand research ethics. So I have examples here. So overview, so I haven't finished my slides, but something like this, introduce research ethics. This is how my class lesson weekly will look like. So I have something they can read. And then the main ideas that they need to look on is the Belmont report and the informed consent. And these are the tasks they need to do. So these are the tasks, the discover, the discuss, the demonstrate. In this case, I don't have a deepen because the deepen is optional. In this case, I don't have an assessment. Practical research doesn't have any quiz. They prove that they understand it through a document that is submitted at the end of the term. But these are the things they can do. So you notice you still meet your students, you still deliver your lesson, but because you set up a home base where all your materials are available, those students who are falling behind can catch up. Those who cannot connect can catch up. Those who weren't able to hear the lesson can use the discussion board to see what questions their classmates have posted. And because you also ask them, you want to develop independence in their learning, you also ask them when they look at the slides, what are the guide questions, what are the things they need to focus on. So, and these will be the ones you focus during class discussion. Okay. The next question now is, how much workload should be assigned each week? And again, while we're discussing the workload, I will show you diagrams, but when we're deciding how much workload should you give to your students, you have to remember that you have to keep it simple. So I will show a tool, but you don't have to follow this tool visually like that. I learned this from one of our former faculty from UNC Charlotte. So you can come up with a visual course map. Actually, you can do this in spreadsheet. Okay, so let's say week 3. Let's set first how I set this up. In Lassal, this is what we do because teachers are already preparing their lesson plan. First, every 3-unit subject is equivalent to 5 hours a week of student load for senior high school. So we tell the faculty, when you design your materials, take note that the students will only devote 5 hours per week to your class. If it is college, it's 7.5 hours per week. So that's how now you define what are the things they can do. And then what are the activities they can be doing? There can be synchronous lesson, and there can be independent study resources and so on. The one you see earlier, these are the ones. Watch video, read article, review examples, and this is the demonstrate by writing the informed consent. So this is for senior high school, the total workload is 5 hours. So at the start of every class, you do a recap. You don't jump in. You just do last week, what did happen? You check your students, how are they? Are there any problems? Then you go only into a 45-minute lecture. Instead of a 1.5 hours, you do 45 minutes. If you can lessen this, the better. Then you do a discussion. So if they've read ahead of time, you can do 30 minutes lesson, 30 minutes discussion, and the last 15 minutes is an announcement where you can explain to them the asynchronous activity. So you can tell them to watch a video, and you notice, don't think that the video is only 30 minutes. The students will keep on replaying the video over and over again. They will pause, they will stop, they will stretch, they will take a break. Even the article, you give them a 10-page paper, they will read 1 page at a time. Then when they start drafting the actual informed consent forms, they need to look at examples. They have a question, they need to talk to the teacher. They need to collaborate with peers. So kung yung kala natin 30 minutes, it will actually double the time. It will take the students double the time of our estimate. And it is an iterative process with breaks, interruptions, social media interruptions, waiting for feedback from the teacher, and requirements from other classes. Okay? So remember, when you ask them to do individual work, there's a lot of interruptions. And when you ask them to do collaborative work, it doesn't make things simpler by being collaborative, because they need to talk to their peers. So the online issue right now with collaborative work is, I have students telling me that her classmates kept making excuses that they have no electricity. And I said, what can we do if there's really no electricity because you went home to the province, right? So those are the things we need to work with. And then they also had chit chat when they start collaborating. Those are the things we need to look into. So what are the opportunities for course mapping? You can visualize the activities and workload of your students, and you can estimate the time it will take them to perform the task. But the nice thing here is, because we devote, if you notice now, our 3-hour, normally in a face-to-face classroom, if I have a 3-hour, 3-unit subject, I will meet my students 3 hours a week. When we shifted to online, we tell the teachers, you will have a burnout if you meet your students 3 hours a week synchronously. So we tell the teachers, at least 1.5 hours lang ang synchronous every week, and 3.5 ang asynchronous. So move all the exercises, move all the case studies to the asynchronous mode. Let the students pace themselves, taking chunks of time to do the activity. Because this is the only way we can survive this pandemic. We don't know what is happening right now in their homes. We cannot expect them to be fully, mentally, and cognitively prepared for classes. So the course mapping allows you to account for the learning curve of students who will use the tool. So right now, our concern, for example, are incoming freshmen in grade 11. They have never used Canvas. So how will we train them? Their internet connectivity issues, their social interaction and conversations with peers. Some are early workers, some are midnight workers. So how do they account for that? And your response time. What if you don't respond to the students? And of course, their personal needs. We have to account for all of that. That will cause interruptions and disruptions in the academic workload. And the advantage, you can gauge the workload of your students and you can adjust succeeding weeks as necessary. And again, the students can pace their learning and follow your progress, especially those who miss synchronous learning. Okay. Then the third phase is to prioritize longer student-driven assignments. So this is related to the keeping it simple. So bulk of the learning time will be driven by tasks that require self-direction. Okay? So you focus on building long-term projects that give students autonomy, and you just give them clear set of checkpoints and deadlines that they can meet. And take note, a lot of times it's not the end product. The end product is just as important as the process in itself. So do not only grade students based on the end product, grade them also on the process. The process itself is a learning opportunity. They develop responsibility and interpersonal skills. And remember, they're left on their own most of the time to do self-paced activities. So they need to resolve problems on their own, right? So those parts should be included in your assessment and not only the final product. So learning is driven by a high level of self-direction. That means when you design your project specs, right from the start, before pag classes face-to-face, you just tell them, oh, you have a project due on the 14th week. Miss, what do we need to do? I'll tell you in the next few weeks. But this time for online learning, you cannot do that because your students may not be present when you explain to them the project. So you need to come up with web pages in your LMS that gives clear instructions, that provide links. Pare-pareho lang na kanina. Instructions, links, how you will grade them, and set weekly milestones. For example, in my case, I have 5 weeks. I will leave the students with their advisor. How do I know they're moving forward? We need milestones. And through all this session, be available for consultation. Paulit-ulit ako dito because this is the main concern talaga ng estudyante. No, nag-online sila, nag-disappear yung estudyante, nag-disappear din yung teacher. And part of the task of my task as the senior high school engagement director was trying to look for the teachers. Kasi trabaho ko yung teachers. I have to look for them. Where did they go? Why aren't they responding? Okay. So just a quick example. Will it load? So this is the one I got from, this is an example from Modern Classroom. So you notice this is teaching modeling, linear model for college. And then they situate the problem into something the students can relate with, so demography. So ayan, may introduction, may instruction, may resources, may video, may instruction na what to do, and then links to resources. Ay, hindi nyo pala nakikita. Hindi nyo pala nakita tong part.
I can see it actually. Nasi-share naman.
Okay. So, teka, balik na ako sa Z-Things. You can look at it na lang on your own because naka-link siya. I'll go to the next part, but that link, if you click on it, you will see the sample. You will see a lot of examples from Modern Classroom, and you can just choose which one. Okay. Now, let's go to weekly milestones. If you're a computer scientist and you're teaching computing, this can be one of your milestones. This is visual lang, ah. This is visual, but this is not, you don't really have to come up with a visual like that. This is just for slide purposes. Okay. So this is I converted something like that. Using that, this is how my weekly milestone will look like for my chapter 3. Wait, sorry, sandali. May phone naman ingay.
Okay. Well, Doc Ethel is
I said disruptions. See, we are in a shared space and you have disruptions from somebody else's cell phone. That's not my phone. Okay. So milestones. Because you give out long projects, you need to be able to monitor your students. And this is one way of doing it. You set clear deadlines. You set clear tasks. You describe the expectation. In the case for my research methodology, practical research 2 class, from weeks 8 to 12 for 5 weeks, they will be writing chapter 3. So what are the things they can do? So I tell them that before you start on week 8, this is your checklist. You already have clear set of objectives, your scope and limitation, your related works. Clear na sa inyo, alam na nyo na yung gagawin nyo because we've covered that for the first 7 weeks. Then on the 9th week, this is the output I will expect from you. The materials you will use, you should identify already the participants and so on. Then on week 10, your output is data collection instruments and 2 rounds yun kasi medyo marami, and putting it all together into chapter 3. This is the visual representation. So in Canvas, we convert this into a set of assignments and that will trigger a reminder to them. Okay. So just a visual representation, that's how you set your milestones. Now, when you assign responsibility to students, when you assign tasks to students, you can also try to see if you can develop their responsibility so that at the start, most of the responsibility is on the teacher, where you focus on the lessons and guided instruction, but as the semester or the trimester proceeds, you start with the students building confidence that they can do it, then they can do it, and we do it. So I do it, the teacher does it, and the students, you do it with the teacher, and then the students does it with the classmates, collaborative, and becomes independent. Okay, so you vary your learning activities or tasks towards increasing student responsibility because we cannot be there face-to-face with them. So you rely on your tasks to develop these skills. And these are actually lifelong skills that are important also for them. Okay, then other types of learning activities that you can come up with that's long-term, can be collaborative, because collaborative activities can increase student engagement. They can also learn through social interaction with their peers. And there are numerous technology tools that are available for students to collaborate. Google Docs. So for example, in my practical research class, since it's proposal writing, I just ask them to share all their Google documents with me. And I do direct edits on their proposal, and I can see the extent of their contributions. So if I want to grade them, I can message a student, you haven't been touching the document for the last 3 days. I can send a message like that, and in fact I did. And I said that will affect your contribution part. Okay. Another one is to do group discussion. They can use a free tool again from Microsoft. I haven't used it. I learned it from some professor. They said they can use Flipgrid. So I took a look at it. Flipgrid allows you as teacher to post a topic. So let's say, tell me something about your situation now in times of COVID. And the students can post short videos or narrative, and everyone can see it and share it in class. So Flipgrid is free for teachers and students, and it's developed by Microsoft. You can also do recorded video presentation, but take note, a lot of students do not like video presentation. Why? If it is individual work, that's no problem. But last term, what happened was when we shifted to online, more than 50% of our faculty members required the final project to be video presentation rather than final exam. The problem is it's a group video presentation because from our perspective, it will be easier for the students to develop something with group mates. What we didn't see was that it was harder for them because they are separate. So I will record my part. I have to send it to someone to record his or her part, and then somebody else has to combine everything. And they have to learn the tools, and that takes time. That's the part we weren't able to estimate, the collaboration. So take note, collaboration and collaborative tools are available, but they may pose problems for students with internet connectivity issues. So do consider that our students may have challenges with bandwidth. So you prioritize assignments that are accessible rather than overwhelming. So it's not the number, it's the being able to access the resources they need to learn. Prioritize individual tasks rather than group work. Prioritize projects that can be done at home than those that need specialized resources. And prioritize low-tech learning resources than high-tech learning materials. So for example, this one, Zthings and Zoom, they're easier to deliver it rather than some platforms. Some platforms require bandwidth, like the one we're using in Canvas. It requires the bandwidth requirement is heavy, so some students cannot connect. That's why a lot of us like to use Zoom, and Zthings is very much easy to use too. Okay, you upload all the materials there already, and the students can access them. And take note, you have to set longer deadlines because of resource constraints and collaboration and communication. Then the fourth one, again, this is just a reiteration, build as much contact as possible with your students. So we are all social beings. So how will we maintain contact with our students? I was going to ask you to do this, but I will skip it now because I think I only have 10 minutes left. So be in constant communication with your students. So maintain human communication, be available for small group discussion, and build a lot of communication loops. So you ask them, so you can use different platforms to talk to them. You can use email, social media, messaging platforms, discussion boards, announcement and reminders, or even shared documents. Okay, so this one, I got it again, mentioned Kiran Budrani. She's the real instructional designer. And she's now working at the Center for Teaching and Learning, UNC Charlotte. She's the one who taught us about visual maps. And this is her slide. So come up with something like this where you can tell the students, if it's super urgent, well, I don't want to give my cell phone, so I gave them my messenger. I don't even want to use Viber because they can see my cell phone number. And then you can tell them if it's somewhat urgent, they can reach you via email, but you provide a response times because a lot of the complaints of the students would be the teacher is not responding. Okay, some LMS provide weekly Q&A forum or discussion board where you can post the questions there. Okay, and for least urgent, some other tools from Cisco, for example. So it's up to you to set that. But at the same time, students should also understand that you will not post materials in their Facebook page. You will not post materials or send it to them. You also need to tell the students that you will post announcements, reminders, and other things through whatever channel, and it is their responsibility to stay updated. So there must be multiple ways you can reach the students also. You can tell them, for example, in Canvas, automatically, when we post new assignments and we say send notification to students, they will receive it via email. The problem is students do not open their mailbox because they want you to post it in Facebook. So you can set it clear to them, no, go to Canvas or go to your LMS or check your email regularly for updates. It has to be clear. So communication humanizes online learning because your students can no longer see you physically or feel that you care. You have to translate this into online mode. So that's why you don't start classes without saying hi and asking them how they are, or doing what I did earlier, some kind of a poll. At the start of every class session, you can do some kind of a poll or a sharing and reach out. Most LMS, or like even this one, I can see who are present. So you can take time to see who among your students are absent and try to send an email or a message to find out how they are. A lot of our students, especially in tertiary level, they are in the condo unit, stuck right now, even up to now, and they're feeling isolated. And they already lost sense of time and routine. Even all of us, we wake up, we don't know what day it is anymore, right? And the last one is to establish an online class culture. So how will you motivate? This one I will ask you to share. How will you motivate students to attend class consistently and to perform the required learning activities diligently? Patapos naman na ako, so we can do this. So how will you motivate your students to attend class consistently and to perform the required learning tasks diligently? Provide incentives. So someone says provide incentives. Ako, sa totoo lang, hindi ako pro-incentive because I want the students to be responsible for their learning. So they, maybe sa start, you use incentives, but after that, they need to know that they need to attend class for their own good. And it's not because of the incentive. Ayan, this one is nice. Ensure the discussion is interactive. Express that you understand their situation. Redundancy in communication. Meaningful learning experience. Okay, so include the rubric so that they know how they will be graded. The plus points is like the incentives. What's no? Make them more interested in the topic. Give positive reinforcements. That one. Gamified learning. So marami na nag-gamified. Show your eagerness for them. Make consideration if possible. Okay, so I will continue now. So nakikita nyo na yung mga ano, a lot here are saying gamification, gamified, and then meaningful examples that will be relevant to them. Okay, interactive and fun. Okay, so I will continue. So online culture is built on trust, respect, and responsibility. This is a bit hard for us because we don't know if the students are listening, they're doing their work. But slowly, we will get there. That's why this is the fifth strategy. It cannot happen overnight, but we're hoping that the online culture, because we don't know how many more terms we will be like this, how many more school years will be like this. So the online culture should be built. We trust our students to do their tasks. The students should also trust us to do our tasks as teachers. So it is, saan na yung ano ko, slide? Okay, so it should be built on mutual trust and respect and develop responsibility among the students. So develop community agreements with your students and revisit this at the start and the end of every class session. So earlier you saw my example. I have a link there for class policies. So in your class policies, you can put all of this. You tell your students that below is our mutual agreement on how we will conduct our online class. So first, attendance. What is your rule on attendance? Then next, when they're present, you want them to be interactive and engaging. Diba? Because they can always switch to another tab. Then you also want them to be responsible to perform the learning activities and to always keep in constant communication. Kumbaga, pag hindi na pumapasok yung estudyante mo ng 2 class sessions, anong gagawin mo? Dapat kukontakin mo na siya. Okay? So things like that. Then also, very important for online learning, be flexible and empathic. Students may be juggling a lot when they're working from home. Allow students who cannot meet live to access materials from recorded synchronous interactions like this one. This is recorded, and provide opportunities for students who cannot join the synchronous session to access the record session. Help students develop basic time management and coping skills. So yung modules coming up with weekly, anong gagawin nila, anong discover, discuss, and so on. That will allow them to pace themselves properly kasi alam nila kung nahuhuli na sila, ano pang di nila nagagawa. Because the LMS can actually help keep track of those things for the students. Then make tasks more accessible and exercise leniency with deadlines and grading. So you cannot expect a seat work you release today for students to be able to answer them today because not everyone, again, is present in class. And leverage on technology tools. So for example, in Canvas, we have announcements and discussions. So post an announcement to celebrate milestones or happy news about your class. And you also provide weekly reminders. Kasi pwede nga the start of the term nagawa mo na lahat ng activities. But still, so you still every week, you still send a reminder to them that there is an upcoming deadline next week para alam nila na you care because you're meeting them. Kasi pag face-to-face, ginagawa naman natin yon. And share interesting class-related videos. And create discussion boards for assignments where they can post their questions. So let me give you an example. So last March 9 to be exact, classes were suddenly suspended. And then when our university found out it will be for 1 week, di ba nawalan na tayo ng 2 weeks classes because of the Taal volcano eruption. And then ngayon mawawalan ulit ng classes because of this. So our Vice Chancellor made a decision and informed all of us that all our classes will shift to online mode. So yun na yung naging dilemma namin. So in my case, for example, that week is around 9th week. That's already writing their chapter 1 and chapter 2. In fact, this one, writing the chapter 2, which is review of related works. So all the lessons, I'm confident that I was able to deliver all the lessons on how related works should be reviewed. But the actual writing itself, when students write, I look at their proposal, multiple iteration yan. Kino-comment ko talaga, nilalagyan ko ng mark. So what I did was when we were asked to shift to online mode, I told the students to send me all their Google Docs link to their document. Then when I started collaboratively editing those documents, I realized there are common concerns and issues that keep surfacing. Tapos ang hirap na isa-isa pa ulit-ulit ko sinusulat sa Google Docs nila. So I decided to take advantage of the discussion board. So after 3 years of using Canvas, this is the first time I used the discussion board. So I created the discussion board, and you notice I told them how to post, what to post, because I was worried that they will post randomly. So I explained to them how to post it, create a new thread. And nice enough, even though they're senior high, they're more mature than some of our college students. And this is what happened. So my task na lang was to monitor. By the time I got online within 24 hours, another student has already beat me into answering the question of her classmate. So this Jules answered the question of Justin. Kita nyo? So siya na nagbigay. So I am just monitoring, and I also echoed back so that they know I read their post. I echoed back and say, tama ang ginawa ni Jules. Tama ang sinuggest ni Jules. And also at the last part, you notice, at the start ng practice 1, I have some groups na hindi pa comsign, may mga biology, I have to understand their work. So I also told them, give them actual example. So this is also showing that I care for the student because I know what their project is all about and I told them what to do. And what was surprising is any academic related concerns can be posted. And halfway through writing, remember this is 2 or 3 weeks of online, this student suddenly posted a question na sinabi niya, nagme-mental block na siya. Anong gagawin niya? Nakita niyo, I didn't even answer because his classmates already did it for me. So in this case, nakita ko, napaka-useful pala ng discussion board. The students themselves started slowly developing their own sense of responsibility, their own sense of collaboration, and working with each other. And ito ang nagawa. The tool is there. We just have to take advantage of them. Okay? So final note, there is the presumption that the students couldn't come to class. They would not be learning. So I also have this misconception. Para sa akin, pag di pumasok sa class yung estudyante, they will not learn, right? So how many like me have made this incorrect presumption that students will not learn? Quickly lang, last 2 slides. So most of us think that coming to class is the only way for students to learn. In a way, that is true, especially nung face-to-face. But right now, since we are online, we still want students to come to class regularly, to come to our online class regularly, because it builds a sense of responsibility on their part. Parang even if napaka-boring ng teacher, even if naaral mo na lahat sa video, it's your responsibility to show up. But again, as teachers, we also must do our part to set up an environment where learning is meaningful. We provide enriching activities that will keep them engaged and self-paced activities that will keep them learning. Okay? Then classroom is not the only place where learning can occur, especially right now in the online channel. It's the online mode. We have resources that we share to them, the tasks we ask them, and most importantly, the feedback. And finally, an online course gets a little better over time. Nung nakita ko ang dinidevelop na ng mga faculty, yung mga materials nila, I said, we're only doing this, we think it's hard because it's the first time we're doing it. But once the materials are there, it will get easier because you can use the same materials over and over every term. And your task will now become delivering the materials, answering student queries, and monitoring students' performance of the task because the materials are already there. You can use whatever you're building now in future courses. Okay, so these are some references that you can access. Pag ginamit niyo yung Z-Things, you can create your account and this set of slides will automatically be saved for you already. So last 2 polls, are you ready to conduct online classes? Ang bilis ni isa. Yes. At least walang nagna-no. Ayan, they're almost balanced, equal. Okay, I'll go to the last part while I start. What is your main takeaway? Baka may mga sharings din kayo. So you notice you can also do this in class, so you can ask your students to share and so on while I go through the questions. So yung mga nahuling pumasok, ayan, kasi kanina 100 plus when we started eh. zthings.com ECJO is where you can access the resources, and if you create an account, it will be saved into you have a copy na. Bakit hindi lumabas? Okay. So yeah, zthings.com ECJO is how you can get a copy of the slides, and it's also available in YouTube now.
So we might have to end this at
Okay,
around
I will end this
10:30.
na.
So
Okay.
no, it's okay. I'm just curating all of the questions
Oh, sige.
now. So for the participants, if you can try to upvote the questions that you'd like to be answered by Dr. Ethel, please try to upvote them in the Q&A so that we can prioritize those questions first, since we're running out of time too. Thank you.
Ito, we can start the Q&A already. Ito siya.
I think, yeah, sige. We
You
have
just
a few announcements kasi first before
okay.
the
O sige, i-release
Q&A
stop.
so that you can prepare for the Q&A. Let me just
Okay, I
share my
stop sharing.
screen first. Sorry. So, right. So thank you, Dr. Ethel Ong, for your very informative talk. So just a few announcements before we move on to the Q&A section. So the CSP Special Interest Group in Women in Computing would like to congratulate the research grant recipients for their research grant offering for the ICT projects for COVID-19. Um, so congratulations to Charmaine Panay and Angie M. Ceniza Canillo for your two projects. So each of you will be receiving 10,000 pesos for the research grant, and what's this? The organizers would also like to thank all of those who participated in the activity. So this research grant was made possible through the support of the Association for Computing Machineries Women in Computing, or ACM's Women in Computing. So following this, we also have a few more talks in the series. We would like to have some questions from our participants, so we already have that. But before that, we wish to invite everyone to the remaining sessions in our webinar series. After this session, there's actually a talk by Dr. Dave Marshall of Diliman University to discuss technology-enhanced flexible learning in higher education. Next week, we will have Dr. Pongolan from UP and Suzanne Cineres from Tech Factors. All of these presentations discuss how ICT plays a role in coping with the ongoing pandemic as researchers or educators. So we'll now proceed with the Q&A session. So
Okay.
let's see.
So ito. So the first one here, okay na?
Sige, kayo na lang po ba pipili? I can, sige, all right. So go ahead.
College students usually have 21 to 24 full loads per week. What advice can we give the administrators, particularly in preparing the class schedules? So, ang first talaga na pwede is, can you ask your administrator to reduce the load of the students? That's one thing we did. We tried to reduce the load of the students. The other one, kung may Ateneo dito, correct me if I'm wrong, what we heard from Ateneo is, let's say their semester spans 18 weeks. They cut it into 2 quarters so that 24 units is 8 subjects, di ba? 4 subjects are taken only during the first 9 weeks, and the other 4 subjects are taken during the last 9 weeks. So parang full term mo, 24 units ka pa rin, pero hinati mo siya. 12 units, kinuha mo ng first 9 weeks, and then the other 9 weeks, kinuha mo yung the other subject. So it reduces the number of variety na subjects, binawasan nyo, pero giving students more time to work. So for example, sa senior high school, what we did, 7 ang subjects namin per semester ng senior high school. That's how DepEd designs it. What we did is to classify subjects. So ginawa namin at any given time, 4 to 5 lang ang pag-iisipan ng estudyante. So for example, may subject kami na math and for example, philosophy. So per 7 weeks nila kukunin yon. Then, the Filipino and the other subject, let's say religion, kukunin nila sa last 7 weeks. So instead na 5 hours per week ang workload nila, magiging 10, pero kasi binawasan yung subject. So the total workload is the same, pero binawasan lang yung variety. Para yung estudyante, hindi siya buong araw 4 na subject iniisip niya, naging 2 na lang. That's how we did it. So that's what you can do to the administrators. You can use the materials from Edutopia to show to them na mahirap talagang maraming ginagawa yung estudyante kasi we have to consider sa bahay pa lang iniisip natin anong mangyayari. Okay? Then for the next one, how will I reimagine equitable access for students? Hindi nga natin kakayanin yun. The only way we can have equitable access for students is if we, what do we call this? If the internet is really improved. Kailangan talaga ma-improve ang internet. Then pangalawa, yung local government, yung gagawin ng Pasig sa gagawin ng Manila. Pero never talaga, hindi talaga magiging equitable ang access. Because really meron talagang estudyante na hindi makaka-access. Kaya ang maganda yung pinopropose ng DepEd, and I've seen some schools doing it, they call it the flexible learning system. So merong mag-online kung kaya, merong mag-TV kung kaya, at merong padadalhan ng packet kung kaya. Okay. Then this one, sa programming. So one of the major challenges in programming. So what can happen here? Hindi na naisip yung answer. So what can happen here? Kasi iniisip mo, dapat nagko-code ka sa harapan ng estudyante, di ba? You think now of your lesson the way we do it in, first, choose a programming language that is free, that students can freely install in their computer or even do coding online. For example, Python, di ba? Kasi pag kailangan ng language na gagamitin nyo, ang special resources and special laboratory, you cannot offer the subject. So choose a language, a programming language that students can easily run in their computer. They have a computer or run online. Then come up with learning materials para yung laboratory na hands-on. Sa simula, you explain, for example, what is a for loop. Tapos you show some example, you say some guided question, and so on. Okay? So ang magandang example dyan yung W3 schools. So I learned Python before using W3 schools and web programming. So teachers now, ang role mo will be to guide them through those handouts, through those worksheets. So yung computer na pinapakita mo will be your laptop probably. You're going through the worksheet with them. So you don't teach the coding the whole part. Meron silang guided question. Meron kang mga questions na, what do you think will happen if I change this part to this? So may mga ganong analytical questions.
Okay, next question is
Lalakawin
from
ko muna
Lito.
si assessment Kasi meron actually akong slide dun pero ini-skip ko siya. Ni-skip ko siya because it deserves its own session with somebody who is really, really very good in assessments. Because so far, I've been teaching research methods and wala akong quiz. So I've never conducted a quiz in Canvas. And I understand that ang pinaka-concern nyo talaga is the trust issues sa students. So what are the alternatives? Since I've never tried it, I cannot honestly give a good opinion on that. So skip ko yung question na yun.
Right.
For faculty members handling large classes, which tool would you recommend? Ito UP. Itong Zoom, kaya niya. Actually, kaya rin ni Google Meet pero si Google Meet na bagal sa laptop ko mas madali bilis si Zoom talaga. So Zoom is my first choice, followed by Google Meet. Then will you also, teka, bakit tumatalon? Dapat yata pa ba? Nasaan na yung
No, it's correct. I'm just marking them as done, so okay naman.
Will you also follow the desired physical distancing inside the classroom? Oh, when we resume classes, yes, the school is already doing that. meron na sila either half class size nila pero mahirap sa teacher kasi yung 40 class size ko naging 20-20. The other alternative was we reduce the population. So for example, on Monday, ang papasok lang ComSci, Tuesday, engineering, Wednesday, ganyan. And then we split them pa rin into different classroom and we're gonna use tools so that nagtuturo ako sa class 1 and then nila live stream siya to class 2 na nasa kabilang class. Parang ganon. Okay?
And so the next question, I think we can take this one from the one from Jonathan Cananete is already answered about laboratory classes, programming classes. So we'll skip that. Assessment din po itong isa. So what approach, a question from John Francis Olivo from Antipolo City Senior High School. What approach will be appropriate for classes that require heavy board work?
Last night sa class ng anak ko, yung teacher was teaching math and I noticed pinaghirapan niya talaga yung PowerPoint. Okay? So, in Canvas, our big blue button, pinaghirapan niya yung PowerPoint to do the tracing. That's one way. Paghihirapan mo talaga yung PowerPoint. Another way is you record yourself writing on a board. And still another way, find tools like sa Canvas kasi meron kaming big blue button. And I think sa Zoom meron din yun. Hindi ko lang na-try. Where you can just show a whiteboard and you can start writing on it. So parang dito pwede kang magsulat. So you're doing teaching by writing on a real board, which is actually just your computer. But in that case, you will need a pen device for that to work. Okay? So yun yung mga option. Paghihirapan mo yung slides, i-video record mo sarili mo, or hanap ka ng video streaming software that has a whiteboard that will allow you to write on it.
Okay, we'll try to find 2 more questions.
Ito, Sparpon. With the disease, will you set restrictions on the type of research that your students would like to conduct? Yes, I've already informed our research coordinators to start looking. Ang advantage kasi lang na nakikita ko sa amin sa Lassal, one of our best practice when I conduct research training, I'm saying that we have our university professors teaching senior high school. So discipline talaga, area talaga nila yung minamanage sila. The students are assigned advisors who are in the correct discipline. So we tell also the students, you have to listen to your teacher because right now we already told the advisors na pag kailangan niyang face-to-face, cancel na yung research or tell the students to do online survey. Pagka kailangan niya ng software na face-to-face itetest, ka-cancel din yan or magiging web-based yung software. So things like that. Unless mag-normalize. But right now, ganun ang mangyayari. We're starting to review all the research proposals and marking those that will require physical field work kasi hindi talaga pwede.
Okay.
How can we address students who are slow learners? Coming up with your online resources, like yung example ko kanina, yung modules na naka-ready na for the rest of the weeks. And then depende sa LMS nyo kung may exit strategy ka. Kasi meron dong click na allow students to access this already. May criteria. Nagkataon sa Canvas, may ganon. So those who are slow learners, they will try to catch up later. They will use the resources online to keep learning and yun yung babantayan ng teacher. Yung fast learners, gagamitin niya yung modules para mag-proceed na sa lesson. The slow learners will be the ones the teacher will have constant one-on-one or small group discussion. That's how you can address students who are slow learners. So itong question mo, si Eric Campano, you can go to modern classrooms. They have a lot of other strategies on how you can help slow learners.
So let's answer this question from Alvin Limpin. There are so many tools available out there. How do we choose from among them? Can you recommend tools that could already help make online schooling better? So I think medyo na-answer nyo na kanina. Let's just...
Oo, yung mga LMS siya. Mga LMS and tools like Zoom and Ztings, Flipgrid, maraming mga ganon.
Right. So how to create a module for specific ahead of time in Canvas because there's no subject load yet in the Canvas
You have to
our
tell
next.
your, yeah, you have to tell your, ang ginawa kasi namin ngayon, naintindihan ko yung point mo eh, kasi before, hanggat hindi natapos ang enrollment, hindi namin nakikita yung subjects in Canvas. But now, because we were all given the instruction by the university to use this June to prepare our materials, what we did was actually, kinausap namin yung assist, the one in charge of our Canvas, and what they did is lahat ng courses na i-offer, maski hindi pa sure na matutuloy o hindi, kinreate na niya sa Canvas, binigyan na ng access yung faculty. That's why you see kanina nagagawa ko na yung mga materials because the courses were already created. Another way is to use the blueprint, but still you will need your Canvas manager to do it. The blueprint allows group of faculty members to come up with the resources like the one I did kanina, sinimulan ko na yan, somebody is actually helping me. So 2 or 3 kaming gumagawa, pero 10 people kami sa pool because we have around 20 sections of senior high school, so mga 10 kami nasa pool. So 3 kaming gumagawa, and then because of the blueprint, para siyang template, pag nag-start yung classes, we will share it to the rest of the other 20 sections. So hindi na kailangan kanya-kanya, nagtulungan na kaming gumawa. Lahat yun available sa LMS. So you just have to talk to your LMS manager to allow you to do those things. Okay.
So I think we'll just answer one last question. This is probably it's a hard question to answer. What approach can we offer to unfortunate students who actively participate in online class when most of the students in state universities doesn't have enough device to use in the online class? So parang how do we help these students who don't have online devices? Because
All
there's also another
students
question.
all
There's also
students
another question.
cell phones, right? Tama. All students have cell phones, I think. Tama. Lahat, pwede
Yeah,
naman
but
natin. If we can assume that all students have cell phones, that's one way to address this. Yung Z-things ko kanina mag-review nyo actually sa cell phones. It will just take time, but kaya sa cell phone. But that they will need a smartphone, right? Yung mga smartphone, yung mga inexpensive smartphone should already be available. Zoom can be conducted via smartphones because pag nagpa-class ako and my son has to do it, I give him my cell phone and that's where he attends classes. The Z-things na mention ko na kanina. Google Docs mahirap, but one time I did have a student who told me wala siyang laptop, paano siya magko-collaborative. And then sinabi ng classmate niya, use your cell phone. And he was really typing sa cell phone. We can find ways unti-unti. Kasi kung wala na talaga, you go to what DepEd is doing. You send packets of materials to your students via Grab or Joyride or something.
yeah.
Yun lang talaga until the government can do something about it.
All right. I think that's all the time that we have because it's already 10:28. So this ends our current session. Thank you, Dr. Ethel, for your wonderful talk. And thank you for everyone for joining. And we wish you a pleasant week. Please be safe. Hopefully you were able to find the answers to your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A. So thank you.